Hello, this is Kyrasis, and in this Blood Death Knight analysis video, we'll be providing a quick overview on the newly announced 10.2 tier set bonuses for Blood Death Knights. So, let us jump right into things. First, there are a number of mechanics that we need to clear up with this tier set, starting with this first bit of information for the 2-piece bonus. The set says that it provides a chance to proc whenever a Bone Shield stack is consumed, but it isn't particularly clear about what that chance actually is. After doing some personal testing and comparing it with other people who have also done extensive testing on this tier set bonus, the actual proc rate appears to be a fixed 10% chance for every stack of Bone Shield that you consume. And if you are wondering, a fully powered Tombstone cast takes the chance of all 5 of the consumed Bone Shield charges and adds them together to 50% every time you use it. Second, the damage increase being provided has several exceptions. It is a whitelist damage amplification on Death Knight abilities, which means that it does not affect auto attack damage. It does not affect pets, which includes the floating dancing rune weapons, the ghoul, and bloodworms if you have it talented. And it does not affect any damage that comes from items. So this includes Shadow Flame Patch enchants, any trinkets or whatever other damage items that you're using. Third, while the base duration of the debuff is 8 seconds, you are able to refresh or extend this debuff up to a maximum of around 10.4 seconds. You cannot get higher than that duration. And this is particularly relevant with Abomination Limb, since it damages all targets multiple times over its duration and reapplies the Ashen Decay debuff every time it deals damage. Finally, you may have noticed a 20% buff to Soul Reaper listed under Unholy Death Knight changes in the initial 10.2 PTR patch. This actually applies to all 3 Death Knight specs, since Soul Reaper is found in the base talent tree and can be used by everyone. All other details associated with this tier set bonus work as advertised. As for the main considerations for the tier set bonuses, all benefits from this tier set are centered around applying and maintaining the Ashen Decay debuff as much as possible. There are no other benefits outside of the Ashen Decay debuff. However, the main way we proc and apply the Ashen Decay debuff does have some complications. First, the proc rate is based on Bone Shield consumption, which is highly dependent on the number of enemies we are fighting, as well as how often they are attacking us, which has some lousy implications in a lot of raid encounters, since a lot of raid bosses will stop melee attacking altogether to cast certain raid mechanics, and in many fights, you will be taunt swapping the boss and they won't even be attacking you for a large period of time. However, since we are also applying the Ashen Decay debuff mainly through Heart Strike, which can only hit 2 targets by default and 5 targets while standing in Death and Decay, we will not be able to effectively apply and maintain this debuff when fighting a large number of enemies. So, we are left in a situation where our best effective uptimes and the best benefits from this tier set bonus come from around 2 to 5 target encounters when we are explicitly not using the Soul Reaper talent. And while the exact uptime number is going to fluctuate depending on a number of factors, you're probably going to be in the ballpark of 50% uptimes if you are in these situations for an extended period of time and doing everything properly. And if all of the enemies are consistently attacking you, which might not always be the case. So this will roughly translate into around an 8% more damage and 5% damage reduction benefit on average. Though again, the exact increases are going to depend on the exact situation, since a lot of things can change from encounter to encounter. Again, this 50% uptime number assumes that a few targets are always attacking you. Not only would this number be a bit lower against a single target, but it would be especially low against certain raid encounters, which again, might not attack you all that often at all. However, if you are using Soul Reaper, you can guarantee 100% uptime on a single target when it is in execute range, which means that Soul Reaper is going to significantly boost Ashen Decay uptime over the course of a full single target encounter. The exact amount of an increase that you see is going to depend on the exact situation, but generally it's going to be more than a 20% increase of total uptime over the course of an encounter. As such, Soul Reaper is significantly stronger than before and will probably make its way into most raid talent builds, especially considering the separate 20% buff to Soul Reaper that was provided in this first 10.2 PTR build. So that will also be the main talent implication associated with this tier set. As for Abomination Limb, it is your only way to reliably apply Ashen Decay to an uncapped amount of enemies, making it a stronger offensive cooldown and a little bit of a defensive cooldown as well. Because of the extension cap of 10.4 seconds, this lets you get at least 22.4 seconds of Ashen Decay on all targets with a single usage, which you can extend to some extent with Blood Boils, that you won't be able to extend it too much off of Blood Boils alone, given the 1 second extension per cast. As for the extension mechanics themselves, they don't seem to be strong enough to cause any sort of haste feedback loops like what we saw at the end of Shadowlands with that tier set. So it doesn't look like it's going to be something that we'll be specifically building around. So outside of Soul Reaper and Raid, we probably won't see too much in the ways of build changes. In fact, probably won't see any at all. Likewise, the extension mechanic isn't really going to have much impact on our rotation or even the tier set as a whole. You might end up delaying Abomination Limb until your current target loses their Ashen Decay debuff if they have it when it comes off of cooldown, and there might be some potential to game your Heartstrike casts if you have the buff that makes your next Heartstrike apply Ashen Decay for the same reasons as holding off on Abomination Limb, but both of those would likely be the limit of things. However, I don't usually do those types of rotational checks until later on in the PTR cycle, and Simcraft isn't even updated for Blood yet, at least at the time that I'm recording this video. So, after giving everything a good review, I think the Bone Shield consumption proc and the fact that the debuff is normally applied through Heartstrike have aspects that make both Raiders and Mythic Plus players unsatisfied when it comes to the two-piece part of this bonus. You'll often be in situations where you'll either have low proc rates due to not being attacked very often, or where you just won't be able to apply the debuff to all enemies. And so for one reason or another, it's going to feel bad. Meanwhile, it is true that this set will likely move raid talent builds more in the direction of Soul Reaper, and at least from a numbers perspective, it definitely needed a little bit of a boost. But at the same time, it's hard to say if anyone will be too thrilled about that. Soul Reaper is technically part of the highest damage build right now in raids, but it still doesn't see a whole lot of use. It is very awkward to maximize usage due to the fact that it has a fixed 6-second cooldown that really wants you to maximize using it, though Blood's normal gameplay loop has a bunch of other priorities with regards to maximizing resources and death striking at specific timings. It's just a very punishing talent in general, and if you misplay it, you will lose a lot of the potential value it could give you, and it hurts our runic power economy because we're using Soul Reaper over Heartstrike, which just generates at least 5 more runic power. If the numbers are strong enough, people will still use Soul Reaper regardless, but there's reason to be skeptical about the current design of Soul Reaper in any case. Finally, the power of the tier set overall just seems very mediocre. It's damage oriented and the damage increase is okay, but the damage reduction benefit is very limited and there's nothing about this set bonus that significantly affects our overall damage mitigation at all. So the total package just doesn't seem particularly good or all that interesting, to be honest. At the same time, I don't have any quick fixes for what we would even want changed with this tier set bonus. Sure, if the benefit was a buff instead of a debuff, that would at least get rid of some of the awkwardness when it comes to using it in Mythic Plus, because then we wouldn't be dealing with the target caps of Heartstrike. But that still leaves a number of issues in the board, and there aren't many redeeming qualities to this tier set in the first place. Uh, Generally, over a PTR cycle, it's very unlikely that we could convince anyone to redesign a tier set, so that's probably not happening. So any changes that we'd realistically see would just be small modifications to the existing design. I mean, in that line of thinking, the tier set might be a lot more interesting if we turn that 20% damage increase to something like a 20% haste increase after we turn the debuff into a buff. I could see that as being fun, and that would also give the tier set a mitigation benefit as well as a damage benefit to make it a bit more well-rounded. In any case, I'm not expecting them to make too many changes to this tier set, if any, and I'll just be pleasantly surprised if they do. As always, feel free to stop by the channel Discord if you want to talk about Blood DK theory crafting, if you would like a Mythic Plus log review, or if you have Mythic Plus related questions. The channel Discord information, as well as my personal Discord contact information, is in the video description below. I'm very interested in hearing what your opinions are about the tier set, so feel free to leave them in the video comments. And if you would like to make it easier for other people to find this content, feel free to upvote the video and subscribe to the channel. In the meantime, good luck and have fun.